As you can tell, Travis is going to record this. So without further ado, my good friend and co-worker, co-board member, Pazit Aviv, is going to give us an encore presentation of Village 101. So I turn it over to Pazit. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. For those of you who attended the conference, this is going to be somewhat of a repeat, but we decided that we needed a more sort of streamlined, the full narrative of the few messages that I wanted to share with people. So I'm going to go through this entire rigmarole, and we can either do questions while I do the presentation. I'm happy to do that, or at the end. I'm going to plunge right in and stop me if there are any questions. Yes?
I will monitor questions if you want. Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to be sharing my screen to have this presentation. You can follow along. Okay. From the beginning, do you see my screen? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So for the benefit of those who don't know me, my name is Pazit Aviv. I work for Montgomery County, Maryland, Aging and Disability Services, and I serve as the village coordinator since 2014. I have been a part of a village startup before I took this job. I'm a founding member of the Village of Tacoma Park many years ago. And since 2014, I've helped 15 new villages start up in Montgomery County, and have consulted many other groups in what I call village-like activities. And so I'm bringing to you the kind of information that I've gleaned from these years of practice. Much of it isn't really my ideas, but just an accumulation of collective wisdom of many different smart people and experiences. So in this presentation, we have two large objectives. One is to talk about the overarching meta conversation on how to succeed in your planning process. And so there are what I call the nuts and bolts questions of how do I incorporate, or what is my liability concern? But this is not about those details. This is about the overall elements you need to keep in mind as you go, not only through your planning process, but much of what I talk about will apply to your ongoing operations of running an organization such as a village. And the second one is the value of communication, how to conceive of your message to your community about your village and what you should say. And in that second part, I will share some of the messages I use. So you will be my audience for the purpose of talking about why a village. So you will see some of that, and feel free to use anything you see. I will share the PowerPoint at the end, and you can use any of those slides for your own outreach purposes. And then, of course, we'll open it to a discussion if you have any questions or observations, because usually the kind of comments that come after these are the most insightful and helpful to everybody. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. So the first component is the to-do list, the things you need to keep in mind as you start, but also as you perhaps reorganize your village. Notes about people and about process. So the elements, I can't see this stuff. I think I'm fine. So the elements that we think about when you start an organization that are really important to keep in mind is the information, the knowledge of your community. A lot of people say, well, I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I think I can say with great confidence, I know all there is to know about that particular place, but you will be surprised to find out that there's a lot that people don't know. We've all lived in a little prism of that particular community, city, town, and we really can't possibly know all there is to know, especially in areas that are diverse in their rural versus urban communities, areas that have diverse ethnic communities that are all cohabitating, where there's more complex socioeconomics diversity. And asking those questions really help put the big picture in place and can help inform some of the decisions you make further. So for example, the kind of questions you can ask yourself is, well, how many people over the age of 65 live in this community? How many people over the age of 55? How many people are the age of 85? So sometimes the old that can really tell, you give you a sense of the kind of community that you're talking about. Are we talking to a relatively young-ish community that would respond better to messages around social connections? And I will talk about that in a minute. Or is this a community with a high proportion of community members that are likely more frail, and they would really seek out the information around services and support? So you see, these kind of data points can very much inform the work you do moving forward. Additionally, when you think about data, it's important to understand the socioeconomics. Is it a wealthy community? Is it not? Would you think people could afford to pay membership fee? And if not, where else can you find and identify community-based organization that would want to help you support your work? So understanding the demographics is key, as well as ethnic communities, because then you need to think, okay, let's say you have an area with two large groups, Caucasians and Hispanics, and with not a whole lot of other people habitating that space. Then the next question would be, what do we do? Do we create a village that is bilingual? Do we say we don't know if we can manage that and we can focus on one group and then slowly figure out the other? But knowing those data points very much help inform any kind of choice you make further. Additionally, if you want to serve a very large area, such as a county with, I'm talking to a few groups with over 1 million people in one county, it's very difficult to start a village for such a large area. And figuring out where there's a high concentration of older adults can then help you focus your initial efforts. You can say, oh, there's a very, in this particular neighborhood, there's 30% people who live there and they're over the age of 65. I think I'll have fertile ground in that particular area, so then I can focus my effort there. So that's the kind of data that you can find, and a lot of it is on the US Census website. They've recently, just in the past few weeks, I've noticed a change, and now they have easy ways of finding data points on particular communities. In addition to that, you can always reach out to your local government, be it city, county, or even state, and find the individuals there who can help you with providing those key data points to inform your work. Another kind of neighborhood knowledge I would urge you to use is an asset mapping tool. And that's a tool that was designed by people who developed an entire discipline that's called asset-based community development. It started back in the 60s, I believe, and kind of surprised it didn't had greater impact in our country, but it essentially focuses on community development based on its existing resources. A lot of us think about community organizing more in the political sense, but there's a lot that can be done with communities when you consider your goals to just make a stronger community using its existing assets. So I think I have a way of collecting. I'm going to open this up so you will see. You probably don't see my Wikipedia page. Am I right? New share. All right. This is a very simple map. Do you see that little chart here? So when you think about asset, a lot of people think about money, where can I get the money to run my operation? But when you think about community development, the recognition is there's just so much out there that is not necessarily monetary, and that by outlining your various assets, you can then forge partnerships, identify strengths, and build on that to make your village stronger and more successful. And you see there's lots of, when you Google asset-based community development and asset mapping, there's these further elaboration on this very basic concept. You can use any other one you like. I just like the simplicity of this particular graph to just convey the idea, and you can do with it whatever you like. So you see there is these 3 squares or rectangles, one within the other. The first one at the heart of it is the people, the gift of individuals. Who lives in your community that has gifts and assets to share, be it youth, older adults, people who are artists, people who are artisans, craftspeople, people who are experts in their field. And so leaders as well. So making a list of people that you consider key to your effort can then help you, because then you can reach out to them and say, hi, I've identified, you are a key person in this community. Would you like to join me in this work? The second rectangle reaches out further out to associations. And by that, we refer to faith communities, neighborhood association, other cultural groups such as community-based organization, and other groups that you consider local, hyper-local, and serve your community specifically. And you can see in this graph, although it wasn't meant for aging in place, I think aging in place is everybody's business, especially if the village you want to start is multi-generational, and some of them do choose to do that. So by expanding your view, you're not just talking about people in the world of aging. We're not stuck in that prism of who serves older adult. We're talking about everybody, because as you see in the message, the kind of messaging I'll talk to you later on, it's about community building, and that's for everybody. And of course, then you reach out to the larger infrastructure of our social civic environment, and that would be business owners, the Rotary clubs, the Chamber of Commerce, libraries, hospitals, local schools and parks and colleges and universities. And these are just examples. This is not a finite list, but it gets you thinking about, okay, who do I need to be adding to my list, and how then can I reach out to them in a systemic way? So that's an asset mapping. And the reason I'm mentioning this to all villages, I think that it's important to do asset mapping exercises every few years for two reasons. Things change, new community join, new community players join, and you also have a better sense of where you're at and who else you want to bring in. So that's a worthwhile exercise to check into periodically. We're going to go back to my PowerPoint. There you go. Oop, done that already. Okay. The second thing we're going to talk about is to understand your people. Who are your people? Now, I've gotten many calls from communities when one person says, I want to start a village. And I often tell them, that's lovely, and I will help you as much as I can, but it takes a village to create a village. This is not a one person or even two people job. Starting a village is a whole lot of effort, and it is important that you find a group of people that can help you accomplish that goal. First and foremost, because it is a lot of work, but secondly, you are creating a community organization for the community. So you really need the input of as many people as you can to make this a viable and applicable organization. One person might come to this with one particular vision in mind. I want to start a village because my neighbor who is 88 needs a free ride to the hospital. That's really great. But would that vision speak to the masses? What other visions around your village would you want to build? Because although you have one reason why you want to start a village, maybe other people would bring additional perspective. So you need perspective, and you need worker bees. So that's a really important point about creating a group. And people ask me, what's the ideal number? I don't know, it's not math. If you have 8 to 10 strong individuals, you will have a very high chances of succeeding in your village startup. And we'll have a whole slide about how to find the right people. So I'll talk about that later on. So how do you find people? That's a really frequently asked question. And the way to do that, especially if you don't want to get stuck in your own little cultural group, is to use non-orthodox means of communication. Yes, of course, word of mouth is usually the best way to find individuals. You have a little potluck in your neighborhood. You're a member of the civic association. You're a member of your church, you talk to your friends, they say, this is a really cool idea, I want to join. But if you want to find additional people with maybe not the same social circle that you are at, sending the word about that in a neighborhood listserv. Hi, we're forming an interest group around villages. This is what a village is, with the link to the Village to Village Network website. If you are interested, come and have coffee in my house. All are welcome. So it's kind of an important thing to start to get your feelers out and invite people, be inclusive in your invitation. And then one of the things we do a lot is we invite ourselves to be featured speakers in all these meetings. If there's a civic association meeting once a month, you tell the person you want to get on the agenda. Helpful tip: do not let them put you at the last item of the agenda after all the road, grass, police report, management. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a civic association or neighborhood association meeting. They tend to be interesting. And by the time they get to you, everybody's already worn out from arguing over the lawn heights and all that. And you don't want that. You want people's attention fresh. So try to tell them, I need 15 to 20 minutes of your time. Please let me be the first item of the agenda, and then I'll just let you be. Because otherwise, I mean, I've had some pretty awful, 5 minutes left. Okay, now we have a featured speaker here. I'm like sitting for 55 minutes trying to have my say, and I have 5 minutes, and people are like, okay, already, let's just go home. It's very late. So these things, it's kind of the devil in the detail perspective, because if you don't pay attention to these things, a lot of effort can be going down the drain and go to waste. So pay attention to that stuff. And another component that you need to start on with very early on, as well as repeat if you have in a village, is to do surveys. And surveys are there for two purposes. One is to understand what people want. There's plenty of tools out there. The Village to Village Network has templates for surveys, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that survey will give you a sense of the pulse of the community. How many you get back? So the return rate of your survey will tell you about level of interest. What are people saying in that survey? Are they focused more on services? Are they focused on events? Are they focused on multi-generational versus older adult only? Are they coming back to you from just one part of your community, or are they from everywhere? So these things give you a whole lot of information, not to mention the fact that they are a great outreach tool. So at the end of each survey, you say, well, if what I'm asking you and the things that I plan to do are intriguing to you, we would love to have you join us. And then you add a little portion at the back that allows people to either share their email and phone number, or give them the chance to sign up for your newsletter or whatever you do. So it's a multi-pronged tool. It's very effective. And of course, we talk about joining V2V, because V2V has a mentor program. It has a repository of documents you can access with the document library. There's all these webinars and other people you can connect with. And I think one of the reasons that the area in the DC region is so robust with villages is because there's this culture of sharing of ideas and supports. If you were a village in a very remote part of the country without a lot of villages around you, it feels a little isolated. And I think that a lot of villages here have leaned greatly on each other for all kinds of questions, or just a person to call and vent, or just see, you know, am I doing it right? I am not sure. And so finding a community of like-minded people is critical for your success, as well as your mental health. And then we talk about the message, and the message is going to be an important component, because the first time you tell people what you want to do is very critical. They haven't seen or heard from you before. All of a sudden you come with a new idea. And if you say something that turns them off, it will be very difficult to then find those pathways into their brain moving forward. So you have to be very sharp with the message, and that message will have been informed by all the other things you've done before that. So before you start talking to people about what is it you want to do, you have to know exactly what you want, not exactly, but what are the things you want to accomplish, and what do you think people want to hear from you. So you have to be super, super crisp with how you send the message out there, so that you are able to attract the people and capture their attention. Like, yes, that's what I've been waiting to hear from my village leaders locally. So that's that. Barbara, I want to take a break and say, I see a couple of comments in the chat, and I have not let you put in a word. So should we take a break and answer a couple of questions?
Yep, that sounds like a good idea. So let me go through some of the chat, and well, I'm not seeing, for some reason my chat's not coming up.
You want me to open that up? I have some access to chat. All right, so people want to see if they can see the slides. Definitely, everybody will get the slides. You cannot read the slides. Dick, is there something I can do differently?
Well, I suggested that what I'll do is, I said, anytime he has a question, just to raise his hand
Sure.
literally.
Yep.
And if he has a question, we'll
Okay.
interact,
I try to stick, there's some common rules around presentations. So black and white usually does the trick. So I really apologize if this is not responding to your vision needs, and I'd love to hear from you maybe afterwards about how I can make this better. I
Yeah,
really
my
apologize.
vision is just so bad that I can't do anything with the slides. So there's nothing that you can do better.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I
Not
appreciate
a
it.
problem. Well, you can use a reader. I know there's these really very nice tool. I can convert this to a PDF, and I believe that if you have a reader, you can use it on the PDF. Would that help later on?
No, I have readers and everything. The only thing that helps me is to have someone sit and read it to me
Okay.
and explain it to me. That's the only way I get any kind of written material at all.
Well, you should know that I'm literally going word by word, so I don't think you're missing anything out by not seeing anything at this point. And I will be very
No, I
mindful
think this is
moving
very
forward.
good so far. I feel like I'm staying with it. So thank you very much.
Not a problem. All right. So I'm moving forward. I thought I'm moving forward. Now we won't let me. Oh, okay. Did I miss one? No. Okay. So because we know in the village movement that there's a lot of different kind of nuts and bolts type questions that come up when you start a village, there's actually several toolkits and guides. Each one of them is great, and they are not necessarily one and the same. So it's good to look at some of them and review, and then extract the information you feel is relevant and valuable to you. The Village OneonOne Toolkit, developed by Village to Village, you can access that with a membership. So I think all of you probably have access to that. We have created a village guide. I'm actually going to share my screen and show you where it is, because some people tell me it's tricky to find, and I want to make sure you know where to find it. So I'm going to actually open a website. Actually, I need to share. Oh, you know what, I'm going to go. All right. Okay. When you Google Montgomery County villages on the website, on the Google Chrome, you'll find us. I'm the first hit, Montgomery County villages. And here I have actually an interactive map of all the villages in the county, but that's not what I wanted to show you. On the left-hand side, you see Startup and Sustainability tab. It's you navigate to Startup and Sustainability. And then here we have a few kind of accordion things you can expand. The Village Development and Sustainability documents. When you click on that, you get 8 different tabs. Village Startup, Risk Management, Volunteer Management, Fundraising, and then at the bottom, Communication and Marketing, Village Models, Partnerships, and Diversity Outreach. So we've, rather than doing things by date, we just decided to do it by subject. There's a whole lot of information here, but for our purpose, the village guide is divided into chapters. So you don't have to like print the whole thing or open the whole thing. You can jump right to the relevant chapter. So we have chapter 1, introduction, getting started, exploratory work. So let's say I open operational consideration. That opens a PDF. And here you can have like table of content. What are the things that you will find when you open and read that text? And we kept the text kind of short and sweet, but I wanted you to see where it is so that when you get to the point you want to read it, you will have an easy way of finding it. So I'm gonna close this out and close this out, and I'll answer questions about that in a minute. Do you see my website or my PowerPoint? I think I only shared my PowerPoint. New share. There you go. Why does it always jump? Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. So we have the village guide, which I showed you where it is, the V2V OneonOne toolkit. The DC Office on Aging also developed a DC specific how to start a village, but I think there's lots of really good information there that you can find on your own. You can also Google DC Office on Aging village, and you will find that. And I also want to recommend, the Village Move in California's the branding toolkit. As you will see in my second part of this presentation, there's a lot to do around branding and messaging. And Village Move in California has a spectacular tool you can use when you think about how to communicate your village to people. So these are the tool guides and toolkits I would recommend that you access. Okay. Now we're switching gears and we talk about, okay, what is the process of actually starting and as well as running a village? And so these are the kind of pointers that I will go over that I think would be critical for you to be able to successfully move through the sometimes not easy process of starting a village with a group of people. So the first one is to be very patient and to talk about patience as a part of your group discussion. You very often will start a village with a group of people who might not necessarily all know one another, and they bring different styles of doing things. So I generally see two kinds of camps in village planning group. The first one wants to get stuff done yesterday. They're very objective oriented and they want to get things done quickly. They don't like to sit and think too much. It's really a boring and unnecessary process. And they're fantastic people to have in your group because they move the process forward. You need the doers. And then there's a second camp of people who are the thinkers. The people say, wait a minute. Did we really think about this through? Is this really the best way to approach this particular topic? Are we making the best decision? Have we considered all the factors? And you want to have thinkers in your group because you want to make sure you do things thoughtfully. But when you bring the doers and the thinkers together, there could be some clashes of civilizations going on. The thinkers will be very frustrated with the doers who are pushing them to get things done too quickly without thinking. And the doers will be very frustrated with the thinkers who are just talking, not making any decisions and not doing anything. So here's the beautiful part of being human, that every person brings their strengths, and you need those two voices in a successful planning group. And the secret to success is to be patient and to know that this is going to be a complicated process and that it's okay to sometimes take a break from talking about something and have what I call, again, like this is a meta conversation, because it's a conversation about the conversation, and say, oof, we're seeing that there's this tension internally in this group of people because some people feel like it's not fast enough. Some people think it's too fast. So how do we find that middle ground? A way that everybody feels comfortable. I think the doers will say, well, I am slowing things down for the benefit of my thinker friends. And the thinker friends are going to say, I am maybe skipping some essential steps in my thoughtful process for the benefit of my doer friends. And landing somewhere in the middle is where you'll be that sweet spot of a successful group. Because if you'll be in a group of only thinkers, that will take a very long time. And some of them will say, well, I think I'll never reach a decision because it's so complicated. And if you have a group of only doers, you might make some critical mistakes along the way. So I think I've said enough about that and the value of different assets coming into your group. So when you actually have these group of people who say, okay, we're all in it, we want to start a village, all those folks coming in, it's important to have some critical decision point. Where do we meet? When do we meet? How frequently? Is it once a week at the beginning, once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month for those who think they need a lot of time in between to do their respective chores? And what are we going to decide? And establishing a formal or semi-formal structure can then help move the process forward. So we're going to have a convening body. And then as you see, the third bullet is having these committees or planning groups that each take on a different subset of tasks. In other words, what I see happen a lot, and that's not a very not successful. It's a more difficult way to do things. Is that planning group meets frequently, and then everybody is involved with every single aspect, and that group is the only place where decision gets made, and that is very tiring, takes longer, and people get burned out. So it's important to say we need to have somewhat of a diffused process where we have subset of people who all know their business. For example, we don't talk about governance, how we going to incorporate, not incorporate, what about the, nonprofit status and all that. You can have a subset of people who take it on themselves to do the research and make some recommendations to the group, so that not everybody need to sit and study all those things together. So you basically bestow upon them the power to go ahead and make those research and recommendations done, and then bring it back to the group. Similarly, operations, how are we going to operate? Are we going to have staff or not? Where is going to be, we're going to have a physical location where we meet? That's the same kind of subject. Not everybody in the planning group need to be involved in every single decision point. Similarly for events, a lot of villages, and that's a really great way to start, is it's a very kind of low hanging fruit by developing events. So you don't have to have even your nonprofit status. You don't have to have liability insurance. You can just be a group of people who organize events for the benefit of the community. So forming a committee that decides on what events are going to take place, where and when they're going to happen, can be a subset of your planning group. Not everybody needs to decide, oh, should we do an event about fire safety? No, I don't like fire safety. That's just, these kind of things will drag on your planning group. And so recognize that the central planning committee needs to recognize that they are not going to have full control over every single process that's going to be taking place. This is more of a diffused democratic process, if that makes any sense. But of course, you don't want to have rogue operations, right? You don't want to say, well, the planning committee just used the village platform to start itself out, and now they're doing things on their own somewhere in the universe, and supposedly they're part of our village, but nobody knows what they're doing, how they're doing. So you don't want that. That can happen as well. So you need to establish these sort of norms of how do we operate together. I recommend that every sort of leading planning group meeting will have a representative from all the committees where they report on what they're doing and also hear about what else is happening so they can collaborate. So events group comes and say, we're going to have a wonderful speaker coming up next month. There's a doctor to talk about COVID. Then the communication committee says, oh, thanks for letting us know. We can put the word out there. That's the kind of work you would like to see in a village that's starting to plan itself and organize itself. And I would say this is a good structure for villages moving forward. So even if you're not thinking of planning, but about just running your village, this is a very viable, strong way to keep a village going. And I'll explain a bit more about that. This is really important for the villages who are just starting up. Very often you have a very excited group of original founders, and they have great energy, they're passionate, they get a lot done, they get the village started. But then after a few years, they are done with that. They just want to move on. And very often I've seen situations where the original founders want to stop. They're really have had enough of the village, which is fine, but they haven't invested in bringing new blood into the organization, and they struggle with finding new leaders to take their place in the board and with the committees. The way to not be there is to constantly think about recruiting more people to be a part of your planning and organizing of the village. And so by inviting people to just join a committee, you're basically initiating them into the world of leading your village. And they slowly become more invested and more familiar with your village, and are much more likely to say yes when you invite them to join your board. And you also have a known quantity because that particular person has already been doing certain things. So when you think about committees, they're fantastic because they help you run various aspects of your village, but they also serve as an essential recruitment tool for your future leadership. So I've talked about autonomy a little bit, and so I'm not going to spend too much about that. And the communication is really important. I've seen a lot of situation where there was what I call committee by email, where these like threads of 30 emails starting from 2 weeks ago, and somebody didn't read all of it and he's saying something, and then people get upset because he didn't read all the emails that were said before, or they say something really annoying and people misinterpret what they said, and it can get very messy. I strongly discourage from holding meetings by email. If you think that there is something that needs to be discussed, you can just say, oh, this seems like something we need to hash out. Let's table this until we meet in person and have a conversation about that. Of course, if you want to just say, hey, everybody, good news, this person is joining us, and everybody says, yay, he's joining us. I'm not saying don't have any communication via email, but whenever you feel like there's something that's more complex in nature and requires a discussion, do not use emails. And last but not least, it's important to enjoy the process. Sometimes people enter it thinking, bringing their work mindset to this process, and they think in terms of objectives and timelines, which are important, but there's joy in what we're doing. We're connecting our community members to one another. We're building something that's meaningful for us. We're volunteering our time and our energy to this work, and that's beautiful. And so let's just not forget to have fun with one another. I recommend planning groups go on a happy hour or just have lunch together where they decide to not talk about anything about the village, just to get to know one another, so that when they come together, they feel, it's a friendship making process. So they don't feel like they're just people that I suffer through to get the village going, but these are people that I value. These are people I enjoy their company, and you become the cool kids club, and everybody wants to join the cool kids club, and then you have no problem recruiting other people who would want to join your fun group of village leaders. Any questions so far? I can take a little hiatus here.
I haven't seen any, but
Okay.
Does anybody have one that they just want to jump in and ask a quick question? Feel free to take yourself off mute.
Barbara, we gave this an hour. I think I need to. That's okay. I'll move on.
Not a problem.
Okay. So as you've seen from all I've said so far, it's really important to be thoughtful about who you bring to this. You want people who are flexible, who are team players, who are good with interpersonal relationship. It takes only one, what I call bad apples in the group to really destroy a group dynamic. And never think about this just as like, oh, we're just here to get some stuff done and let's focus on the objectives and forget about the people, but because it's all about the people. It's all about the relationships, and it's all about the individuals you work with and the people that you connect to. There've been some situations that were not pretty where one person was really toxic, and I'm going to be honest, and it's just sometimes these things happen. And so if somebody, a toxic person is somebody that I would define as an individual that creates divisions of us versus them, somebody who is always talking behind other people's back about how bad of a job they're doing and how not enough or not good enough it is, and how they're kind of a victim of a situation. They're trying to do everything, but nobody else is doing their work. And it's just this constant complaining. A toxic person is a person who is going to make people feel bad about coming to the group because there's a lot of anger and expectations are not being met. So just be mindful about people who are just bringing bad vibes to the group. It sounds a little iffy, or maybe not as systemic what I'm saying, but I think that once you're with somebody who really creates a drag in a group, you will know it. It's really pretty obvious. And understand that a lot of it is really group dynamic. Everything I say is your planning group, your committees, they're about the people and the dynamic in between those individuals. So if a lot of people want to join you, that's fantastic. But before you bring someone into the very core of the planning group, make sure that they get vetted and screened for their personality, because you want to have a group that is cohesive, that works well together, that understands that you need to compromise, the importance of communication and clear communication that's open and authentic, that people can be relied upon to get stuff done. And you also need to know that it's going to be a little messy, that there, as I've alluded before, there's the doers and the thinkers, but there's also a bunch of other areas where people are not going to agree on, and not be afraid of disagreement. There is going to be disagreement in the group. You do not want groupthink. So consider disagreement as a productive way of developing and designing a model of a village that would really work for you at the end. So hear people out, listen to the objectives. Do not keep the dissenters back at the back of the room, but let people say what they think so that their input is incorporated into whatever decisions you make. And appreciate people's work. People take the time to do that. They need to know that they're being seen and appreciated. Don't take anyone for granted. And sometimes people say, well, how come only 3 of us are sitting here doing this work? Well, focus on the 3 that are here and make them feel appreciated and seen, not on the 10 that didn't show up. So whoever you have, it's good enough. And now we're going to talk about the communication. I'm going to go through it a little quickly because I don't have much time. Okay. So the next few slides are slides that I use when I communicate to people about the villages. Before I talk about what a village is, which is often the problem in presentation like this, you plunge into a village is a group of people that help people age at home. That's wonderful, but that's actually a what question. And the first question you need to ask is a why question. Like, why are we even doing this? Why is this important? So you paint the picture in the bigger scheme. So the first thing I start is to talk to people about what aging is, because people often think about aging in a deficit mindset. And so we're trying to shift the way our communities and our individuals in the community think about aging. So aging is an opportunity and not a crisis. It is a solution, it's not a problem. Aging individuals are an asset. They're not a burden on our society. Aging individuals are a resource rather than a drain of resources. And the aging population is a group that can make social, economic, cultural, and spiritual contributions to their communities. And so that is a very powerful way of reframing the discussion on what is it we're talking about. Too often people talk about it, the home care crisis, not enough, social security bankrupt, older adult in their home, not letting younger people move into their homes, yada, yada, yada. So we need to change the way we think about aging, because these are the individuals that would want to join your village, that would want to contribute to your village, and that would respond to that message positively, because you're basically telling them, I see you. I see these individuals out there, and these are people that you are talking to. Yep. Questions about that? Right.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions.
Yep.
So somebody just came on, I didn't hear. So one question is, how do you eliminate a person who is not a good fit for one of the committees?
It's an excellent question. It depends how early in the process that is. A good way of eliminating is a little harsh, but what you can do is you can tell that person that you feel is not being productive is perhaps giving them a one-person project. You say, I really love your contribution. You're strong with XYZ. Could you please take this on? Because you really do want to give people a sense that they belong without having them feel like, oh, somebody just dissed me. That can happen, but I'm not going there yet. So there's like a multi-pronged approach. So by assigning a particular project to somebody, you can then divert their attention away from a group that you feel is not a good fit for them, but they can still do something.
Right.
The second,
No, I was saying.
the second way to approach it is to have a one-on-one with that individual and say, I'm a little concerned. Here's the thing that I'm seeing, and bring some concrete examples, not just like, oh, it's not really a good fit, but why? People need some concrete examples to why things are difficult. And you might find yourself having some difficult conversation with an individual. If you feel like this is going to be too tricky and there's no way that person, there's some people that no matter what you say or do, they're going to be really difficult. You need to do this as a group and to come together as a group. So it's doesn't become a personal thing. So, oh yeah, you are kicking me out because you don't like me, but rather it has to be an agreed upon process by the entire group saying, We really love you. We want you to stay a part of our village. We don't think this is a good fit, and be honest. And these things are not fun. I guarantee you, I've been in very painful conversations, and they felt so painful that some people wanted to leave the project altogether because they did not like what it made them do. It was like a little bit like surgery. The sooner you do it, the better, because then the less entrenched the person is. And it will not feel good at the beginning. But once that person is no longer part of the group, and the group can then take on this new dynamic, sans the person, you will feel much better. What I tell people who have been in this process is this: this village is not about you personally. This is not your social group. This is an organization that is there to serve the entire community. And therefore you have a responsibility to your community to create the best village that you can. And if that individual is an obstacle in that way, then you have what I call a fiduciary responsibility to your village to do the thing that's right for the village. So try to remove that personal. This is not a personal thing in that sense. It's more of, I'm thinking about my community at large. And I'm happy to have an offline conversation about this because it can be very painful. I hope I answered.
I think
No.
you did. And I think Marcia actually answered a little bit
Yeah.
also and contributed to that. So
Not easy. Okay, so I'm moving back to communications, unless Barbara, you want to ask another question? 'Cause
Nope,
I'm
we're
mindful
good.
of the time. Yeah, a few more time. Okay, so this is a slide. It's a little cartoon called The Talk. It's by a wonderful group called Rhymes Without Range. Rhymes with Orange. Sorry. And I went on their website and they say, if you're not putting this slide for profit purposes, it's okay to use, just give us a heads up so you know I am not stealing anybody's ideas. But it's a really cool cartoon because these two men are sitting on a bench in a park, and one of them says to his friend, they sat me down and said, Pops, we need to talk about aging in place. And then he proceeds on to say, and then I asked him, aging in place of what? And indeed, that is the question. What in place of what? Because 94% of the individuals over the age of 65 live at home and want to stay at home. And so it is a reality. It's not something that we are kind of like a vision that people are not really connected to. But when you think about it, what does that mean to age in place? For most people, it's an acceptance of their status quo. Like, I've lived here for 30 years, I'll just keep on keeping on. But actually, I would like to suggest that aging in place is not that, but it's a question. Because then the next phase of that thoughtful process is, what would it take? What would it take for you to accomplish your aging in place? Because aging in place is multifaceted and involves many, many different aspects of our life, both as individuals and for ourselves as communities. It involves your built environment. If you live in a house with 30 steps to the bedroom, to the first bedroom, if you live in a hilly community, such as one of my dear neighbors back in Tacoma Park, when she broke her hip, she couldn't go back home. That was the end of it. So from being fully independent, enjoying her community and her life there, she had completely lost her ability to do that and had to find an apartment in a faraway place and was completely isolated afterwards. So is your home accessible? What about your neighborhood? Do you have sidewalks? Do you have benches? Do you have places to rest? Do you have ramps to go down to the road? Are places ADA compliant? So when you think about built environment, it is both a personal question, but also a community question. The second component is health. Are you adapting your lifestyle to adapt to your aging process? Do you know what that would mean? Do you have access to good geriatricians? I know locally we have a huge shortage of geriatricians and neurogeriatric doctors. What about good home care workers? Do we have enough, or do we have a staffing shortage? So do we have enough health insurance to cover our health needs? Another element is mobility. What happens when I can no longer drive my car? Do I know what options are out there? Did my county, city, state create enough public transportation solutions for me to get around without my car? Can I mobilize myself in the house? How would I do that? Another aspect is financial. Do I have enough money to age? Statistical data shows that most people over the age of 65 do not have sufficient funds to help them age at home, or even age, cover the cost of their living for the next 20 years. And the last but not least is social. Do we have the local infrastructure to keep us from being isolated? Who will you turn to when you need help? So when you think about aging in place, it's a call to action. You need to make some really important decisions, get to know your neighborhood and community, and make decisions about what needs to change for you to accomplish your goal of aging in place. So when you think about aging in place on a social aspect, and that's what we're going to have a deep dive, because that's where villages come into play, right? And this is a little analysis that I've done as a result of many conversations with people in this area, and everybody I talk to outside the region say that that message resonates with them. So I'm going to go through this with you. What we've done in this country is we have neglected our social infrastructure. We did not invest in building communities because we didn't understand the value of having a community. We build our suburban communities without community living in mind, with, at least locally. These are large lots, homes are built in the back, people entertain in the deck in the back of the building. People don't really see each other on the street anymore. Chance encounters are limited to none. There's no sidewalks, so you don't feel safe walking around. Kids don't play outside anymore. So we drive around and there's no place to just informally gather or meet people. You need to really want to see somebody to make special effort to see them and connect with them. We also had a situation where, 70, 80 years ago, a lot of women were at home caring for kids and taking care of home, but they were not just idle doing that. They were weaving those informal social networks of community around. And so when they went to the labor market, we created this vacuum in the neighborhood. There's nobody there to form that network, right? We have people who are working all day long. When they come home, they spend time inside their homes with their nucleus family, whoever lives in the house. And so we don't have a lot of opportunities to build relationships among neighbors and friends. So when somebody retires and their kids move out of the house, all the networks that they have been predominantly involved with are now gone. You lose your connections with your workplace. Some stay informally a little bit, but that doesn't last long. Your kids are far away, they're busy with their lives, and you look around and say, wait a minute, where is everybody actually? I don't know who my social networks are anymore. So you've seen that we have created this kind of lack of investment in our local communities, and that's where villages come into play, because many people remember the way things used to be different when they were young. When they were running around the street and they were up to no good, the auntie down the street remembered them and knew them and called their mom to tell on them. And so there was a sense of this holding, that when you walk down the street in your own neighborhood, people knew you, not just your name, they knew you. And if you were not out in a few days, they would knock on your door to see what's going on. So where did that all go? And why are we not doing it anymore? And I think that's a big question that we all have to ask ourselves. This is not just about aging. This is about the loss of our social infrastructure. And villages are about reweaving those social connections in our community. Any questions about that? Okay, I'm moving on.
So,
All right. So we have this situation. This is a unique point in time. We have people who are aging. This is an aging country. I know at least about the county. I just recently looked. 2019 data says over 1 in 5 people, close to 1 in 4, are now over the age of 65 in Montgomery County. And I think that this is the wave. This is where we're going. So a lot of people are getting older. They all want to age at home, and they want to age with what I call autonomy and self-determination. People don't want to lose their autonomy. People want to make their own decisions about how they live on their own terms and have this high degree of control. But they also want to be connected to their community. And so a village is an organization that helps people accomplish these two seemingly contradicting values. So what is a village? Now that we've talked about community and connection and aging in place, we understand that the village is a grassroots-based organization that helps people create those connections locally. That is what they do. And they do it through all kinds of means. They connect through social activities and other events, educational workshops, walking clubs, chess clubs, bridges, lunch at the cafeteria of the local university, what have you not. And then they also have neighbors, helping neighbors approach, so that when you need that friendly neighbor to help with a very simple task, you have a place to call. But the very heart of it is community. And because villages are all started up by local neighbors, it often takes the shape and the flavor of the local community. Every village is unique and different because it gets started by different people at a different community. They all share a vision of a community, a strong community that helps people age at home with high quality of life. The way they go about doing it might be different a little bit, but they all do the same thing. And this is where I go into what kind of services villages might offer. I'm not going to go into this too much because we're short on time, but we're talking about volunteer rides, referral to recommended providers, services and contractors, social activities, as I've mentioned, is a biggie. Limited in-home help, villages are not your 24/7 home care provider. But if you're back from the hospital and you need a hot meal cooked and delivered, or someone to do a little laundry run, or if you want somebody to just help you change the sheets because you can't bend for a while, you can find a volunteer who would help you do that. They can help with computer help and friendly calling and visiting, and oh, the list goes on and on. So we can focus about this, why villages are so critical. I'm not going to spend too much on this. I think I don't have much time. So I'm going to just say villages are awesome and you guys are awesome and amazing. And so whenever you get too downtrodden about how difficult some things are, remind yourself that you are doing an incredible, amazing community work that will last way past your time in that place. So I just want to take the time to appreciate you and thank you for all the things that you're doing for your communities. And just know that we see you and appreciate the things you do for people. COVID, that's a whole different conversation. But because of the shortness of our time today, I will not say much other than that you need to build on the opportunities and use your message to appeal and attract additional people that might not otherwise be interested in what you're doing. You can create your message around, we are there for people around critical emergencies such as COVID, and here are the things that we can do for you. So that can be a hook into people's attention. Keep in mind that there's some things that are working in your favor and some things are working against you. And I'm going to leave it there for now. Back to you, Barbara.
All righty. Well, see, that was a action-packed hour. Love it. Thank you. And I'm sure, I don't see any more chat. I like the fact that everybody was interactive while you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
Good chatter. And we will share these slides. We will download the video and share that also, so you can take it back to your board members and community members that you're working with side by side. A lot of material. We appreciate it, Pazit, and your time. And if you have any questions, Pazit, can you throw your email in there?
Yep, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, and
I think my contact might be at the end. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Okay. And I think we're going to have a whole total seminar or webinar on COVID-19's risks and opportunities, because
Yep.
I met with my local village today and they're just trying to emerge out of and go back to programs, and they're a little scared, but
Yeah.
they're doing it. They're going to do it. So
Yeah,
but thank you all for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Well, my email is there. Feel free to reach out to me specifically, and I'm happy to offer any other workshops if interest.
That'd be
expressed.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks,
Thank
Pazit.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.